Welcome back to Fix It in Post. My name is Nick, and today we are going to create this anime effect in After Effects.
Editors should never use After Effects for editing.
Alright, so that's kind of fun. We're basically turning ourselves into an anime character. Now, obviously I have an access to a green screen at my work, so I think that makes things a lot easier. But if you have anything that's just a colored cloth or anything that just separates you from the background, that'll always help. Alternatively, you could also try using rotobrush 2, which is in the After Effects beta. I'm not shilling for them, I'm just saying it's a really good tool, and you're surprised what kind of results you can get from this thing. I'm still amazed at what it can actually pull off. And guys, don't forget to check out my Instagram page as well at nickbenku_motion. Look, I would love to see what you guys create, and tag me in these posts. I want to see what you guys are creating, and especially if you're using the tutorials to do so, I want to see it, guys. Thank you guys, you are the best. Alright, so let's get started. So we've got this footage here. You're just going to pull your footage in, and we're going to just start off by just getting some keying going. If you've seen my video on Josh Ulafemi's channel about my top 10 plugins, you need to get this one, which is called FX Console. It is a great plugin, and it's free. And that's a great price. It will just make your life so much better because you can just access your effects straight away. Look at this. I don't have to go to the effects panel. I don't even know where it is right now, but I can just press Control and spacebar and bring up this little panel, and I can type in key light, which is all I want. In fact, I can even go to the preset, which is what I actually really want. So let's go to this one here. Now, if you are looking for that and you just need to find out where the effects panel is, you can just look for the window effects panel, effects and presets. It'll come up over here. And this is a long, laborious process of actually getting the effects panel coming up. It takes a while to load up, and you look up key light, and we're looking for our thing, and we just pull that on, but we're not going to do that. We're going to use FX Console. Again, Control Spacebar. Look at that, it just brings it up. Alright, so we've added that in. We're just going to pull our key. Here we go. Pull that key. We're just going to have a look at the screen mat just to make sure that we've got all the bits and pieces. As you can see here, a little bit of this is still a little bit not quite keyed through, so we're just going to clip this white just a touch. We're just going to clip that black just a little bit, and hey presto, that looks pretty decent. I'm just going to put the res up just a little bit because this looks pretty garbage. Some of my glasses is going to be a little bit reflective. I'm going to change this to a hard color. And then we're just going to intermediate result, back to intermediate result. Now, as you can see here, there's a lot of that green all around me, which is fine because what we're going to use next is, what's great about this preset is we've got this thing called a key cleaner, which will actually clean up a lot of the key here. And then we've got advanced spill suppressor. Now watch this. Bam. Pretty impressive, huh? Alright, so that's the key done. Let's get our background plate going. So I'm going to pull in this background plate here. I've got this nice little Tokyo street vendor plate that I got from a stock footage site, which is very nice. It's got a lot in here. I actually didn't see the second part here. Isn't that really funny? Anyway, we only need the first part. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring that into the comp. And you can see here that, that was the original plate. Now we're going to make that go away in a second. But before we even do that, we just want to see how this sits in the thing right now, which is great. All right, now let's go to making the actual animation lines, which isn't actually that hard to do. Now, I'm actually going to make a new comp. We're going to call this Action Lines. And we're going to make it 1920 by 1080, 25 frames a second, and we're just going to make it 10 seconds. Just for all those punters watching at home, I'm assuming some of you know some of this stuff, so just so you understand what the comp dimensions are, I have also made this comp that we're in, shot 1, 1920 by 1080, 25 frames a second, and it's just roughly 3 seconds, because it is a very short shot. Alright, so let's go back to our Action Lines plate that we just made. We'll just bring this one here. We'll just make a new folder, comp 2, just so we're not getting confused. Comp 1 is where I did my practice, basically. Comp 2 is where we're going to do it for real. Alright. So if you're in After Effects 2020, you actually will be excited to know there is a new feature in After Effects 2020, the most recent one, which I believe is this version. So version 17.1.1. Now in this version, you're going to find this cool little feature. So I'm going to draw a line. So just grab a pen tool and just draw a quick line. and it's, that kind of thickness. Now, if we twirl down, and then we twirl down, and then we twirl down, we go to the stroke. You're going to find this new little section here called taper, which is kind of dope because this is something we've been asking for in After Effects for probably a million years. So, yes, as long as I've been around. So, I'm not a million though. And look at this. Look at this. We can taper the strokes now. This is miraculous, guys. I know some of you younger viewers out there don't understand. This is something we've been wanting for a really, really long time. So, we're just going to taper these strokes because they make them look more like, anime lines per se, which is kind of nice. Yeah, I like that. Look at that. It's a tapered stroke. Look at this. Behold its gloriousness. Anyway, so let's go back. Let's duplicate this. So we're going to press Control D or Command D, and we're going to bring down another copy of this. We're just going to make this a little bit different. Just make it a little bit shorter and just move where it is in space. And we're just going to do this a few more times and vary the width a few times as well. We're just going to make it a little bit thinner in some places as well. Yeah, that'll do. Alright, let's do that a few more times, and I'm just going to time lapse this so you don't have to watch me do it. Alright, we've got our lines done, which is fantastic. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to try and we're going to grab all the lines that we just created. We're just going to grab this, and then we're going to right click on them, and then group shapes, which is great. So now we've got one group shape. Now what we're going to do is add a repeater. So we're going to go to add and go repeater. And what's going to happen is that's actually going to duplicate things for us to the right just a little bit, which is fantastic. Now let's see how far we have to go to the right to see. Alright, so here we go. We need to just extend it so that the strokes actually don't overlap too much. We could probably just have a little bit overlap somewhere. Yeah, a little bit overlap's not bad. Let's make that a little bit more. There we go. Okie doke. So if we pull this back to the beginning, what we can do is let's try and line this up. This is how we're going to fake the pattern. So we're going to line the tip of this stroke here, the furthest most stroke there, and we're going to set a keyframe. So bring up P and press the stopwatch to set a keyframe. And now we're going to just go to maybe about the, let's say 1 second mark. And we're just going to hold down Shift and drag this way across till we get, somewhere so this tip just kind of, it's not going to loop perfectly, but it's going to be very quick. It's not going to make too much of a difference. So let's just have a look at that. I'm going to press N to shrink the workspace here, to end the workspace. So this work area here is set to the whole comp, which is at 10 seconds. We're going to press N, and that's going to shrink that down. And we're just going to see what the loop section looks like. And we'll press spacebar to just preview. That looks too slow to me, in my opinion. So we might actually want to speed that up. Let's make that a little bit faster. All right. That looks a bit better. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to... So far you can't tell what the loop point is, which is great. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this. We're going to put an expression on this. So I want to keep this... While that's going to... We want that to loop. So we want this to continue going forward because at the moment, as you can see, if we press play, it'll just stop. So we want that continue to go, to continue this cycle going forward. So let's loop this. We'll put an expression on it. We press Alt or Option on a Mac, and we're going to type time. Oh, sorry. We're going to type loop. I'm getting my expressions mixed up. Loop out. Make sure it's a capital O. Everything else is lowercase. Open bracket, and then we're going to type quotation mark, and we'll cycle down to cycle, and then we'll press Enter on your keypad. And here we go. And now it is just looping infinitely. And what's great about this is if you do have to make it longer for whatever reason, you can just make the comp longer. So if you decide to go, okay, I want to make this a 20-second comp, and you're worried that it's only going to finish at 10 seconds, well, look at this. It'll just keep going, which is amazing. So we'll keep it at 20 seconds. Why not? All right, so let's go back to shot one. And so we've got this character, and what we want to do here is we actually want to zoom up the character so that he is myself is zoomed up in the frame, coming towards us. So I'm actually going to make a quick null, and what we're going to do here is we're going to parent my character, me. I keep saying my character, I know, I'm talking to the third person. We're going to parent all these and make them all 3D. Actually, we're just going to make the plate not 3D. But everything else will make 3D. And what we'll do is we'll parent this to the null. And we're going to make a keyframe position here. And actually, it might go back just before. Sorry, just let me drop this to a quarter res because my computer's having trouble dealing with this footage. Okay, so just as my arm comes down, we want to zoom up and I want to be zoomed in. So we'll set a keyframe just here and we'll zoom in. And what will happen is that we want to zoom it so that I'm right in the middle of the frame here. So it's very dramatic. So, right, so that's what we want to do. So let's set, now I'm going to put an easy ease in here. I do use this motion too, which basically gives me a very easy way to set speeds on to set my velocity influence on After Effects, which is really awesome. But if you don't have that, a very quick way to do it is another way to do it without having to use this thing is right click on, actually make sure you press easy ease first. So go keyframe keyframe assistant, go easy ease, and then go to right click on it again and go keyframe velocity, and make sure you change these two to 75 and again to 75, and that motion should be a lot better than just the straight easy ease, because I actually find the easy ease is a bit boring. So that looks a lot more dramatic, and I'll just show you on the graph editor what that kind of looks like. So as you can see, it's a very slow start and then fast and then slow, and so it's a smooth, fast, smooth kind of vibe going, if you like, which is great. All right, so what we're going to do too is we're going to bring down the position property and the scale property, and we're going to set keyframe here at the beginning of this. And what we're going to do as well is zoom this up. Now the reason there is a reason why I haven't parented this to the I didn't parent this to the null was because it does have a few issues with it, and I didn't want to making it a 3D plate actually makes it a bit difficult to work with. So I'm just going to do it manually, but it's all right because it doesn't have to be completely accurate. So what I'm going to do is to try and mimic the zoom in, the background has to come forward a little bit too. It doesn't have to come forward as much, it just has to come forward a little bit. And so we can just scale it up, and so that'll be enough. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put the same influence. Go back, if you want to do that, you can do that again, but I'm just going to make sure I put the same influence again. I'm just going to use my quick method here, which is using the motion 5 script. So it was 75, so that'll actually ease in. Okay, fantastic. Awesome. Now that's all we want to see. Now, next, what we're going to do is we're just going to do a quick mask here, because you can see that my hand just comes across. Now we don't have to mask the whole thing, we just have to mask let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have to at least keyframe at least 5 sections of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this by casting Command or Control D. We're going to lift it up above the plate here, and we're just going to take the positioning, all the keyframes off this one, on the position and on the scale, and we're going to parent this to the plate 1. Alright, so we're just going to find out where we need to actually make the mask points. So here we go. Again, I think this is where we end, so there we go. That we don't need any more, we don't need to obscure any more than that. So just to cover the bit in front, we only have to start pretty much, we have to start here. So let's go through the process of masking this out, which is super easy because it is a solid shape and relatively easy to do. Alright, I'm going to bring up the mask path. I said a keyframe. It hasn't moved much, which is great, so we don't have to move that one. No, I think we can just nudge this one just a touch. Actually, I don't think you'll even notice, but we'll just nudge it just a bit so it's not completely static. And that's done pretty much. I don't think we need to do any more than that. I mean, that's obscured. So let's press F just to feather the edges a little bit. All right, so we'll turn the opacity back up on this layer just so you can see what we have done. So as you can see, it is coming through, but if you look closely, you can see that the edges are a little bit jank. It wouldn't be a straight edge because this thing is out of focus. So what we want to do is we want to feather this just a touch. So we're just going to turn off the overlay thing here, the toggle mask and shape visibility, just so you can see. And we'll just feather it enough so it just looks realistic to fit in with the rest of the plate. And we'll turn it back on so we can see what we're doing. All right, so make it half, I think, and that's a fair compromise. There we go. Now the thing is obscured in front of his hand. My hand. Haha. All right. And now what we're going to do is, we zoom up. We're going to create a solid. So let's create a new solid. We'll go layer, new solid, and then we'll make it a bright yellow, which is what I kind of did before. And let's go OK. And we're going to bring it down here. So below the plate. And so what we're going to do is we're not actually going to keep this layer here. We're going to actually pre-comp it. So what we'll do is we'll go Shift Command C or Shift Alt C. Was it Shift Control C? It should be. Might be Shift Control C on a PC. Anyway, but you want to pre-comp it. So we'll pre-comp this yellow comp and we'll move all the attributes in the new one. And we'll call this action line background, and we'll close that up. All right, now at the moment you can kind of see the yellow kind of is there, which is not what we want. So we're going to pull this to the front, and then we're going to pull this here. So what's supposed to happen is that as we go through, that should transition to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a fade. So it fades from the yellow into, fades from the background into the yellow. We might actually make that a little bit more dramatic even, like bam. So when it does come through, you'll see how it does come through into that solid yellow color. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add our action lines in. So let's do that. And thankfully we've already made it quite long, so it's quite easy to add in. Now, this is going vertically. Now the only reason why is just because we get a little bit more real estate going this way, but if we wanted to go horizontally, vertically. Did I say vertically? I meant horizontally. It's going horizontally, and the reason why I did it horizontally is because it gives us more real estate when we make that comp. But it's good because if we do turn it this way, and we just wanted to have a little bit more length, which I feel like you need with these longer comps, with these longer strokes, it's nice to have a little bit more length, because the lines are very long. So it's very easy to just make new ones by just, dragging it, duplicating and dragging it across, and then offsetting them a little bit, which is what we're going to do right now. So let's just do that. And so as you can see here, already you can kind of see what's happening. Now, if those lines are too fast for you, or you feel like there's not enough of a break in them, what we can do is we can go in and actually adjust the repeating pattern where we were before, and just make it a touch wider so they're not so close together. And so when you do look at it, you can see it breaks up a little bit more. So let's try that out. I mean, it's not bad. I'm not in love with it, but it works. All right. Now, another thing that I was doing was I set a slightly darker color on the edges. So what we'll do is we'll duplicate this, and we'll just change the color of it to maybe an orange, a slight orange. There we go. Just something a little bit darker, just to contrast it a little bit, and just a touch down on the contrast as well. And let's just feather that out just a touch. We'll just offset it, so not necessarily a square shape, but just something a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more interesting than just a square shape. And we'll invert it, and we'll just make the feather a little bit wider as well. There we go. Now we're starting to see a little bit of a comic book vibe coming to life here. Now, one of the issues too is the fact that it doesn't match, right? Like the picture I'm standing against is not great, as in I don't look like I fit in the scene. So what can we do about that? Well, there's a couple of things you can do about that. One is we're going to color correct this shot. So we're going to add a curves adjustment to it. So if you just type in curves, or if you've got my nifty little plugin, which is the where you press Control and spacebar and you get curves come up, you just press curves. I'm telling you guys, you need this. Anyway, we're going to have a look at the individual channels and try and get this to match. So let's go and do that. So let's go to the beginning here where it's a little bit easier to see my face. On the Mac, to change between the red, green, and blue channels, to look at them individually, you have to press Option 1, 2, or 3. And on a PC, it's Alt 1, 2, or 3 to get the red, green, and blue channel up respectively. So we're going to change to the red channel. So we're going to we're going to press Option 1. And you can kind of see here that it doesn't look too bad. Actually, you just have a look at the scene to see, would this black and white person fit in with this scene? At the moment, it looks like the red is just a little bit too low. So we're just going to bring that up. But overall, it actually doesn't look too bad in the red channel. So I think we'll be okay with this. Now we're going to go to the green channel now. Now in the green channel, you can really see where it stands out. So we're going to switch to the green channel here in the curves. And we're just going to bring that up just a touch. Not too much, it's just a little bit of adjustment so the blacks look like they fit in with the rest of the blacks. I don't think that's... Just making sure the midtones kind of fit nicely. And then we'll press to go to the blue channel, which is Option 3, or whatever the equivalent is here in PC world. We're just going to, again, bring the blacks up just a touch. And then bring the highlights down. I don't think you need to bring it down that much, actually. Maybe look at the midtones a little bit. Actually, I think we'll bring... Actually, I think the black is a little bit... Yeah, that looks better. All right. Now, let's go back and have a look. Now, this looks like it fits in the scene a lot better than before. So, as you saw, this is before, and this is after. So, now it looks like it fits in a little bit more. Now, this is just from experience. I actually think the green is just a little bit too low. So, I'm just going to bring this back up just a touch. I actually think that looks better to my eyes. Anyway, it's not an exact science, but that is definitely something that gets you in the ballpark. So, that's kind of good. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to basically... set a keyframe here just before we change over, because obviously the color space is going to change quite dramatically. At the very least, I want to be able to bring this up, bring up the exposure on this, because it is a very dark looking shot. So we're going to set a keyframe just here, and then we're going to bring it up. So press U to bring up the keyframe, and then we're going to go to about here, and then we're going to try and see if we can make this. I'm going to swirl these down so we don't get in the way here. I'm going to twirl these down, and then I'm going to just do a rough adjustment here in the RGB section, and I'm just going to bring this all the way up. Now, actually, you know what? I'm just going to reset it right here. I'm just going to do a hard reset, just it'd be easier. So, because the colors just look a bit more natural. So I'm going to bring the overall mid profile just up just a touch, because I am sitting in the dark just a little bit too much here, which is no good. I shouldn't have shot it so dark, but there you go. And I can probably put a bit more red in the channel just to make myself look a bit warmer, like I'm getting warmed up by the background. I'll bring the blue down a little bit too, just so it matches the yellow. So there you go. And there kind of sits, I kind of sit in there a little bit better. I actually still think I feel like I feel a little bit too dark. So maybe I'll just bring this all up just a touch. Very bright, isn't it? All right, so then we've got that section going. Now we're going to add the lines in the foreground as well. So let's grab a couple of the action lines here, and we're going to pull them into the front of this shot. Now obviously they are going vertically, horizontally, so let's make them go vertically. And we're just going to make them a little bit larger too. We might actually, you know what, we'll make these 3D. What we're going to do is we're going to basically parent these action lines to the null, And we're just going to make them come up just a touch too, so they sit forward a bit, just until this number becomes 0. We'll just make this z-axis 0. And we'll actually even go further than that. Alright, and then we'll shrink it back down, because it is a little bit big. But we do want to keep these lines in here, just so they have a little bit more interest to them. So, and you can see here, you can kind of see where the comp is not working, where the comp is chopped off. So what we're going to do is we're going to fade them in for about here. So actually, we might even do that. Let's do this. Let's fade it in from about here, so we can't see where the edge gets cropped off. You can kind of still see it there too, can't you? Maybe that's a bit better. No, you can't see it. So we've hidden that line, which is great. Okie doke. Now this was something I thought I was mucking around with before, and I actually thought looked kind of cool. So what we can do is, to make this look a little bit more interesting, we can actually make another set of lines here, and we'll actually pull them across to the other side. And we'll also offset just a touch. Just remember to move your keyframes back so they match up with where we began. That's kind of looking very close to what we've already kind of got. There's a couple little bit more flourishes we kind of need to do to make it work, but we're almost there. Alright, so now we want to add a little bit of camera shake here, just because, you know, it just demands it, let's be honest. And so I'm just going to add a new camera and go and make it 50mm. And we're just going to, and I'm going to make another null as well as my camera shake null. And I'm just going to leave it as a non-3D item, and I'm going to parent the camera to that, because I actually just want to shake on the X and Y coordinates. I don't want to shake on the Z coordinates. Let's put a little expression here. So we're also going to add a slider expression, slider effect, slider control. And what we're going to do is twirl down and twirl down, and we're going to make sure your positioning is up as well. How you get there? Sorry, let me try that again for everybody looking at home. Press E to bring the effects up, which is the slider control, and then hold down Shift and press P, and we've got both those things up at the same time. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this wiggle, so our favorite expression, wiggle, and we're going to make this 10, and then we're going to put comma. Oops, that was a full stop. We're going to press comma, and we're going to link it up to this, and we're going to close the bracket, and we're going to put a semicolon, and then we are done. Alright, so what has happened here is that we can actually now keyframe the wiggle expression, which is great. So right now, as you can see, nothing happens, which is to be expected. Actually, I need to make these action lines 3D as well, otherwise this effect won't work. But I should make, alright, so let's do that. Now, I'm going to keyframe it so that the wiggle, the camera shake comes in as soon as we come to the end here. And so I'm going to make this 10 as well. And what you're going to see is it'll start getting really shaky as we get into the anime portion of the footage. Gives it a little bit of energy. Now, there's an issue here. I don't know if you can see it. It's very subtle, but we can see the edges of the action plate, action background plate that we created. And that's because the wiggle expression is actually moving this plate at the back out of bounds. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cheat a little bit, and we're just going to zoom this up, you know, just a little bit. All right, let's try that one more time. And that fixes that issue, which is fantastic. And that's what we want. Now, if you want to just add even more, just make it even more ridiculous, we're just going to put a keyframe here and then go to the end, and we're going to push this to the side, so I'm slightly drifting. And as I'm doing that, you kind of see it's very anime, because that's what anime characters do. So they point and they stand there. Now the action lines are slightly getting in the way, so I'm just going to make sure to keyframe those as well. All right, so just to give a little bit of variance, I'm actually going to go in back into the action line background, and I'm actually going to cut out a section of it. So I'm just going to solo. I'm going to turn off these two so you can see what I'm doing. So here, I'm just going to put a slight feathered mask on this section here of the footage, and I'm going to subtract it, so it's the opposite way around. And I'm just going to put a little bit of a feather just there, just to make it a little bit more interesting in some sections. And I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to copy this mask, and I'm going to paste it on some of the other ones as well. And that one as well. Just to kind of give it a little bit more variance in the background there, which I think it just makes it look a bit more interesting. And likewise, I actually like the fact that the opacity is a little bit lower. So we're going to drop the opacity on all these just a touch, maybe about 50. Because I don't want the lines to be solid. I think actually the lines looking solid actually kind of detracts from the look a little bit. I was watching a lot, actually, the best example I think of where they've kind of done anime lines in real life is Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And they've done an excellent job of sort of breaking the style to make it look a lot more comic booky than a lot of comic book movies do, if you know what I mean. Like using a lot of those tropes in a really interesting way. So that's subtle. So now we're going to put one more effect on, and then we're going to go back here and do it. So we're going to do this effect. We're going to put a glow effect on. So what you're going to do is we're going to look for the glow effect. So you're just going to make sure there's a lot of random effects in here, but glow is it's a very basic one. Just make sure you don't go to the Factory Pro one. It's just called glow. And so it's right here, stylize, glow. And right now you can kind of see it's very, very bright. Now, if you are on, now this is something that you need to know. If you set your project up as an 8 or 16-bit project, this glow effect won't look as good. So I'll just show you what I mean. And how you change your project is here. There is a little button here that says 32 bits per color something, or BPCS. I actually don't know what that stands for, but it's a 32-bit color space. Now, if this was an 8-bit color space, which it generally comes in as a default, so the way you switch it is you hold down the Option key or the Alt key, and then you change it. And you can see the glow is not nearly as dramatic. Now, the reasoning for this is that the color space opens up every time you basically change it from 8 to 16, but there's no dramatic effect. But when you go to 32, this happens. And the reason being is that the brights get very bright and the darks get a lot darker. So that means that there's more space, more highlights to play with, which is really awesome. So that's kind of what we want to try and achieve here, is kind of get these really nice bloomed out effects coming through. So just make sure that's changed to 32. You can actually just click on it as well, and you can actually select what your color depth is as well, if you just want to get there. But by default, it's set by 8. But 32 is where you want to be for this. Now, just bear in mind, this has some unintended consequences if you're not very familiar with 32-bit color space, because it is very much, you need to tame it a little bit. So sometimes I don't always have that on, but for this glowy effect, I think it works really well. So we're going to copy this glow effect, and we're going to copy it across to the other ones. And again, I'm going to drop the opacity again, because this just is a little bit too intense for me. And again, likewise for this. All right, so that looks a bit better. Let's have a look at what we've got now, which is kind of cool. Now let's do the same here. We're gonna copy this glow effect, and we're gonna paste it onto these bad boys. So we've got some similar glows. And again, we're gonna drop the opacity. So just make sure you go to here. We're gonna drop the opacity just a little bit more, and likewise just a little bit more. Okay, too easy. And that's looking pretty good. We're getting very close to the end here. To do the text effect is pretty basic. So I think that's very much the easiest part of this whole process. So we're going to do the text effect right now. Oh, actually, and we just make sure we put a motion blur on everything as well. So make sure this has motion blur. We're going to check motion blur on this. So this little circle thing with lots of circles behind it, that's motion blur. We'll check that on. We'll check motion blur for everything basically, just to be sure. And so there'll just be a little bit of action motion blur coming in, which is awesome. That's kind of all you want to do. All right. Now to add text effects, it's pretty much this. Pick your favorite font. I like Blambot, which is just a nice font from the comic book. I don't know, website, Blambot. That's just a comic book font. And that's just, we'll just put something in here just so we've got the text in. And I'll have it come up just as it's just finished resolving. Where does it end? So it just comes in, finishes the zoom right there. After Effects Animate. Now I'll make it white actually. And we'll set the mode to, we'll set it to screen. And we'll put the glow effect on. So we'll just steal the glow from here. And we'll put the glow effect onto these bad boys again. Now that's way too much. So the way I combat that is I just dial it down until it just becomes readable. So I think around 20% it became kind of more readable. Now you can actually put a bit more of a glow. You can actually adjust the glow on it. So we can actually make it a little bit brighter. Yeah, a little bit more glowy. I'm actually going to drop that just a touch more. So actually, we don't even need to make that a screen. Ooh, look at that. It's so bright. That's what I'm saying. You gotta be aware of what this plugin does, because it can be wild, like it can be unwieldy at times. Now, if you wanted to, this is a preference. I like everything kind of sitting in nicely, so I'm gonna also make this a 3D layer, and just so that it kind of jiggles around with everything else as well. So you can kind of keyframe what you want to say here, obviously, but you know, After Effects, Anime, or you know, stop editing in After Effects. I mean, I feel like I need to say this. I would stop saying it if people would stop doing it, but they keep doing it, and I don't understand why. So from a composition point of view, that's a little bit too bright on that side. So I might actually go in and darken this edge just a little bit. So I might go back to the action lines section here. I might actually make this solid a little bit darker than what it is. So I'm going to go back into the solid settings and change this color just one more time. Might make it a bit reddier actually. It's like, oh, that's nice. All right. We'll still keep the saturation up. Now just move this across just a touch, so we're getting more of the orange. It's a bit easy to read on, so that becomes a bit easier to read. Alright, and also just to make this look a little bit more cinematic, I'm just going to put just the tiniest amount of Gaussian blur in the background here. So we'll go to the plate, get some Gaussian blur going. Put repeat edge pixels on. I'm just going to put like 10, just a touch. And that just kind of makes things a little bit more cinematic in my opinion. Alright, and the final bit you need to do is you need to actually put a little bit of film grain on there. Now, I know not everybody loves the film grain, but I do. So we're just going to drag this film grain, which I got from Gorilla Grain. Not sponsored by them, just like their stuff. We're just going to set it to overlay. Oh, just so you know what it looks like. So this is Gorilla Grain. I mean, honestly, you can buy grain packs super cheap, or you can make your own. This is nice because this is actually simulated from real grain. Oh, not simulated. This is actually real grain. So it's actually from the actual film stock that they take it from. So it's kind of nice. And grain just kind of nicely ties everything together. So it's just a nice thing. I'm going to put a little bit more. I'm going to put a bit more. I'm going to over the top and make it really old school. This is a very old film dust effect that I've got. So I'm just going to scale that, transform, scale that to fit to comp. And we're just going to send that to screen. And we're just going to have this really old film look. And there you go, that is part 1 of how to make yourself an anime character tutorial.
Editors should never use After Effects for editing.
Alright guys, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you guys watching all the way to the end of this tutorial. I know it wasn't a short one, but I do appreciate spending time with you and teaching you something new, which hopefully you can use at some point in your video production projects. And guys, a whole bunch of you out there are not subscribed to the channel, but you are watching the videos. So do me a favor, just click the subscribe button. It'll just take a second. And if you don't like what you're watching, then just unsubscribe. It's pretty much that easy. And remember guys, check out the Instagram page. I want to hear what you guys are saying. Leave me a comment. Tell me if you think One Piece should have ended a long time ago or you are still loving this show. Anyway guys, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.